Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Human-Centered Design UAE Meetup. My name is Jonathan Steingisser. I'll be one of your co-hosts this evening, and we're very excited. We've got a great speaker joining us tonight. So the session is being recorded. You can see all of our past sessions on YouTube if you look for Human-Centered Design UAE, United Arab Emirates. So any of the questions you ask or the chats we have later on will be recorded. You can access it later as well if it's too early, too late, wherever you are. I just want to introduce the team and thank them, of course. We've got Katral, Nada, Greta, and Assad, who work tirelessly behind the scenes. And they'll be supporting and on the socials as well. We're on LinkedIn, you can find us. Greta is going to be supporting us on Instagram, Nada on Twitter, and Assad on Facebook. We are trying to grow those platforms, so if you can tag us as the talk goes on tonight, we'd appreciate that. That'd be great. We, as I said, are very excited. We've got, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, Shilpi. Hopefully I've said it right. She's got a lot of experience behind her in innovation and worked in many different markets. She's recently relocated here to be based in Dubai, but she's still working with quite a lot of different areas in the world. And she's going to talk to us about what's holding you back in terms of innovation and detangle the 7 myths to scale innovation. So wherever organization you are, big or small, should be a fascinating talk. A little bit about Shilpi. She's the founder of Khoj Lab, a global innovation consultancy with operations in the US, UAE, and India. Her mission is to help business leaders discover new growth opportunities and optimize the process as they scale innovation within the organization using a human-centered approach. She brings in more than 15 years of experience working as a futurist, design strategist, UX researcher, industrial designer, architect, and design educator in organizations, mostly GA, General Electric, and Herman Miller. And over the last year, she has built a global team of multicultural, multilingual women who interact with clients in 6 different languages. Her expertise lies in being a great liaison between design and business thinking while engaging her clients in design-led methods and frameworks to enhance their businesses' value further. So very excited and a big warm welcome from all of us. Oops, went too far. Over to you. I'll just let you share your screen and yeah,
Great.
welcome.
Well, thanks so much. Let me just share my screen.
So while you're doing that, one thing I did forget to mention, if you could use the chat just to write where you're from, your name, anything that you'd like to share, feel free to chat or answer each other's questions. If you have questions, put them in. The co-organizers and I will be looking at the questions, and then we'll share that and ask on your behalf after the session, or during the session, rather, after the presentation. Thank you, Shilpi. Over to you.
Thanks so much, guys. I'm excited to be here, and especially being presenting part of the human-centered design. I mean, we are all really all the time thinking about what does that even mean to organizations. Just before I get started, I just want to give a little bit background of where I'm coming from. So this session, as Jonathan and I was discussing of, whether we should do this or not, and we were thinking, this session is going to be a little different in the sense that we're going to be sharing a 6-minute video that we created as a result of some research that we've been doing with big and small organizations around this particular research was based around 3 particular countries, Latin America, US, and India. And you'll see in the video, though we are talking a lot about India as a market, but I think most of the 7 myths that you'll notice are very globally applicable. So just to give you a little bit premise of who I am, I know Jonathan, thanks for the lovely introduction. Um, uh, I created Khoj Lab 2018. So we're pretty new in an organization, but when I started the mission, I was very clear that client work is only a little bit of my work, but we can only do the client work good if we actually explore and experiment with new topics and really challenge the status quo of how design is valued in businesses. So I would say 45% of our work is really revolves around thought leadership and writing. So I have a Medium post that I write about, but most of my writing is related to bringing change or working with transforming organizations that have legacy systems that are trying to bring innovation in-house. So at Khoj Lab, with that, we basically help organizations and innovation leaders discover and optimize their operational flows, which is really, if I think of innovation performance, I think of it twofolds. One is what's happening inside the organization and what's external to the organization. So inside the organization, you can think about it as, ways in which we're innovating and ways in which we are bringing efficiency into the system so that we don't just innovate once, we innovate multiple times. And so it's really the process, the buy-in from the stakeholders, engaging the right capacity, capabilities internally. And then the external part is really looking at customer experience or understanding your user segment or really trying to define your market positioning and things like that. So anything related to the consumer or the user or the people who are actually for which you're creating value through your offering. So with that, and it's a little bit important to the context of what I'm going to be sharing with you around, what may be holding the organizations back when they're actually on that journey to innovate. So basically, we have a composition of multifaceted people in the organization, researchers, futurists, strategists, and all kinds of designers. We are also working across industries, so we're kind of agnostic to which industry we work on because we believe that that makes us more useful in the sense that we are able to really connect the dots between getting inspired from different industries and things like that. So here's a kind of a landscape of who we work with and partner with and work for. But I think to sum it all off, the biggest thing and important thing for me personally has been, what is the value of design in business and trying to create clarity and focus. So as we all know, as designers, we're really, I think one of the biggest value we bring is really bring clarity and focus and a different way of thinking to the businesses. And we do that based on basically three areas. We work on really what matters to the users. So taking a bias towards users and trying to understand where the potential for the business may lie by problem framing or dwelling into more exploratory research, and insight-led innovation, which is really defining the next big opportunity for the companies and organizations. And then lastly, talking about institutionalizing innovation and trying to identifying the gaps and barriers. And that's the part that's really a lot of organizations have done well, but there are a lot of need to do things differently. And that was kind of the premise of the work that I'll be sharing with you today. It's based on really us going in, and it started when I started the company, actually 2018. I was very curious and I asked a lot of questions like, what does innovation mean to you? What does design mean to you? How does design fit into innovation? What is invention? How do all these pieces kind of come together? And out of these informal kind of discussions with thought leaders that I admired, I also, started thinking about really formalizing my point of view into something. And so we I conducted like 9 leader interviews across the world, and to really understand and clarify for myself of what's happening and why certain companies are being successful in doing what they're doing versus some are not. And when I started this project, I thought, again, this is like a passion project for me. It's not a client work. It's absolutely out of curiosity, my curiosity and my team's curiosity in really understanding what innovation is. And when we dwelled into this research, we thought we'll be able to have a better idea of what is innovation. And contrary to that, we found that it was when we talked about innovation, everyone had their own definition and own perspective on what innovation is. And it was really hard to have like one way to define innovation. But what was clear to us was that what was not innovation. So that's what took the form of these myths of innovation. So here in the next video that we will present, so we'll basically this whole presentation will be a discussion on these 7 myths of innovation that you'll see presented in the video. And I would like to give a shout out to my creative partners in Pune, India, who actually did the animation, Studio Vitamin D, who was collaborating partner on this work. And when you see it, the video goes by really fast. It's 6 minutes. And the way it's structured, it gives you some context of why we did what we did. And then it goes into 7 myths, and each myth is basically explained and busted um, through a call to action. So I want you to take out your notebook or make notes or questions around each myth. And as you're looking at the video, I want you to think about which of these myths resonate the most with you. So just again, I want you to understand, again, it's going to be fast, but we're going to have a discussion and an opportunity to kind of talk about what is going on in organizations and how can we as individuals or as individual contributors, as researchers, as designers, and even leaders or managers can do something about it. So it's not just about just knowing, because these are problems that every organization knows. And I think when you go through these myths, you'll say, yes, I know this, this is very obvious. But I think the key thing to think about is like, is this happening in my organization? And if this is happening in my organization, what is that little thing I can do as an individual to bust something like that or overcome this barrier to bring more value to our innovation efforts? So with that, I'm going to play the video, and I'm sorry, when I shared my screen, I'm not sure if I share sound. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start the video. Again, take notes, and after this video, we will talk about which of the 7 myths resonated with you the most and why. And we would love to hear some stories that you are seeing. And you don't have to name the organization if you don't want to. It could be past organization that you had left, and or any examples and stories. So I would like you to make notes as you're doing, number the myths, and then we'll talk about it. Yeah. Okay, Jonathan, I want to thumbs up if the sound and everything is clear.
Yeah, sure, no worries.
Okay.
Myths of innovation.
Yes, all good.
What is the most tossed word globally today? What seems to be everyone's mantra? Innovation. There are varied definitions based on people, places, and perceptions. 3 decades after liberalization, Indian companies are still chasing the innovation dream. Over 70% CEOs in India want their employees to feel empowered to innovate. Yet, innovation is still ranked as one of the biggest challenges today. Is it because we really aren't innovative? Is there a problem in our understanding? Why is it so? We at Khoj Lab set to find out, what is innovation? We searched, we researched, we reached out to thought leaders, designers, academicians, growth officers, and we arrived at What is not innovation? From this research, we present 7 myths of innovation that are entangling us. Myth 1. Innovation is that one bright idea. This is the most common myth. The problem is romancing the idea as a solution, with little thought about its movement through the organization. It is important to synchronize the idea and manage with your stakeholders as it evolves. The idea is the seed, only 5 to 10% of the whole thing. Very important, but it needs to be nurtured. Lesson is, map the flow of an idea and streamline it. Myth 2. Innovation is to fight competition. Successful companies focus on genuine improvement. They don't innovate to fight competition. Godrej understands to sustain growth, innovation is imperative. Being innovative means evolution with times, knowledge of future needs, and customer value. The real goal is to keep looking for opportunities. Thereby, beating competition is a byproduct of being consistently innovative. Myth 3. Digital transformation is innovation. Most digital transformation projects start with new technology migration, without engaging in experimentation or exploration. However, innovation is about identifying problems and finding new ways to solve them. Technology may be an enabler for solving problems, but it's not the only solution. Digital transformation is creating the illusion that you are protected. Point is, don't just migrate, explore and improve. Myth 4. Innovation is expensive. There is a common perception that only large companies have the luxury to innovate. Truth is, the majority of big innovations started cheap, quick and affordable, irrespective of the company size. Let's look at PillPack. Within 5 years, they have grown into a unicorn. Not a single component of PillPack's products and services is new to the industry. Yet, the secret is that they identified a simple human need and aligned the system to make business sense. Key is to identify what to pause and what to invest in. Myth 5. Innovation has immediate return on investment. The way our business mind thinks, we set a goal, plan, define the resources, set KPIs, and measure progress. But innovation needs small experiments, and sometimes experiments fail. Key is to take returns from present and invest them in the future. The return on innovation investment may not be visible immediately. It is not a financial statement you put at the end of the year. In short, experiment, fail, reallocate, reap. Myth 6. Innovation is a one-time act. With advances in technology, any disruptions will stay relevant for a short period. Companies need to envision the future with users' relevance in perspective. All innovations have a limited era of impact. How can an organization be continuously innovating, improving, and reinventing itself? That's the holy grail. So, innovate small and repeat. Myth 7. Innovation is a natural phenomenon. Introducing focused team activities and innovation champions is essential. It cannot be a phenomenon of natural progression. Innovation is a forced activity. You need to have active players and you need to change the mindsets of the systems to make it happen. Don't just wait, orchestrate the magic. These myths lead to some significant barriers that hamper the success of large corporations in India. The Indian mindset is risk-averse, which leads to a copycat culture. It romances the past and takes pride in jugaad. All of these present challenges to embracing new ways of doing business. Now, let's ask again, what is innovation? Innovation is to address a need that brings value to the world. It is systematic orchestration of mindsets and activities. It can happen at any scale, small or big, low risk or high risk, incremental or disruptive. The result is not always totally new. Put simply, not everyone needs to innovate, but with the right tools and processes, anyone can innovate. We are on a journey to explore, inform, and impact the innovation landscape in India. Let's join hands.
Great. Oops.
Myths.
Okay. Great. So I want to pause here and ask the audience which myths they identified with most. Maybe start with the co-hosts.
I don't know. I think for me, all of them. We've also formed recently an innovation department, which is not really an innovation department, I think. And it's hard, I think, having alignment between, as a designer, what you're thinking of innovation is. And I mean, so I'd say top of mind is probably the one where you had the speed of return of investment, the expectation that we have an innovation department. What are you delivering this quarter, this quarter, this quarter? Go, go, go. Like, where are the outcomes? Where are the outcomes? Or even a design team doing experimentation or testing. There is a expectation that results just come in thick and fast. Yeah. What about, I just want to throw maybe to Greta or Nada as well.
Yeah, I have, I think, so because I originally worked in advertising. So for me, the one that resonated most was the very first one, this idea that it's one big, bright idea, you know, when inspiration strikes, this kind of eureka moment. Not that it doesn't, you know, imply that it takes hard work and just iteration and coming back and applying your bum to the chair and doing the work. So that one actually resonated with me.
Right. Some of the words that I want to clarify, you know, jugaad might be a new word for a lot of the global audience. Jugaad is actually an Indian word, and it's often associated with innovation. Though jugaad is really the act of using scarce resources and like just adding something together and solving a problem. So it's really like a Franken prototype, but a prototype that actually makes things work, like it solves a problem. It's not a very scaled kind of a thing. So jugaad is a traditional way of, you know, looking at innovation in scarcity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, and it seems like for a lot of other people in the group, we're seeing that innovation kind of holds this idea that it could be expensive and it requires a lot of effort and work, or even, for example, for a lot of businesses, it requires an innovation department or an innovation lab for you to actually be innovative. And I think that's probably the one that really resonated with me, as I think innovation is a mindset, and it's, you know, it needs to be part of your everyday, and it needs to be small. So I think when you said innovation needs small experiments, that I think really stood out, and it needs to be experiments that you're actually experimenting. It's not like you come up with an idea and then that has to go through. You experiment, you see if it works, you iterate, and you keep going. So those parts really resonated well with the work that I'm doing now.
Well, that's awesome, because I remind myself to 10, 15 years ago when I was in a job and we were doing research, we would always make these gigantic projects. And now I think like we need to not do research all at once. We need to spread our research throughout the process of making the idea robust, right? So I think it goes back to chunking things into smaller pieces so that we can kind of produce quick deliverables and yet, you know, kind of, you know, clarify and the unknowns as we move towards more focus and certainty in that idea. So yeah, definitely, I think that's one thing that could apply to research as well as designers, or, you know, whatever level they're supporting that innovation effort. I think you can think of it in terms of your own contribution and how can you avoid large, gigantic projects to smaller size, chunkable sizes. Yeah. Anyone else from the audience?
Nada, you've been monitoring. Did you want to share anything from the audience, or should we let, I don't know, someone?
But
So here, sorry, so in the audience, people are saying that the one innovation number 3, innovation is a digital transformation. So that's one that's been mentioned. Myth number 6, innovation is a one-time act, and innovation is being expensive.
Right, great. I was just thinking we can maybe dive into, so what we've done
Myth 1.
after this work is we actually took each myth and somewhat created some action items. So what can we do actually about these things? Because it's not enough, I guess, today's environment that to say that, oh, that's a problem and it's an organizational problem. It's always an organizational problem, but the question is, how do you kind of tackle it as an individual or as a leader or as a manager? So what we did is we took each one of the myths and kind of developed some kind of an action card. So I don't know, Jonathan, do you, unless you have other questions about in
No,
general?
happy to keep going. I think we can save some of the bigger discussions or to the end.
Okay, yeah. So I thought we'll delve into 3 of the myths and then kind of engage the audience in the discussion more deeper into each of the myths. So I thought since the video went so quickly, I thought I'll replay the myth number 1 and then kind of go deeper into it quickly. Yeah. Okay.
Myth 1. Innovation is that one bright idea. This is the most common myth. The problem is romancing the idea as a solution, with little thought about its movement through the organization. It is important to synchronize the idea and manage with your stakeholders as it evolves. The idea is the seed, only 5 to 10% of the whole thing. Very important, but it needs to be nurtured. Lesson is, map the flow of an idea and streamline it. Myth 1.
Okay. So I was thinking, like, if in the audience somebody has a comment, that would be great. Recall a moment that hindered the flow of your idea, small or big. What was it? And was it an unclear impact? Old mindset, miscommunication, or perhaps lack of resource. So I want to hear like an incident or a story within your organizations where it could be a small or a big idea that actually didn't make its way, and why do you think that happened?
I might jump in to buy some time. Maybe people can have a think, and happy to let someone share themselves. We had, not long after I joined, about a year and a half ago, we had a hackathon, and I didn't know many of the team, so I kind of walked the floor and then joined one team and came up with what I thought was a great idea. We ended up winning, but I think the concept maybe was a little too radical or involved too many different cross-organizational teams and would change dramatically the existing strategy. And there was a little bit of momentum following to try to, how can we bring this to life? But it kind of was short-lived, and unfortunately it never made the light of day.
Right. So do you think it was because of organization realizing that we didn't have the capability to implement that idea, or was it lack of communication, whether it was just silos?
Probably maturity of the organization. Like I've worked in Australia at more mature organizations that treat hackathons not just a fun thing for staff to do, that actually look more seriously at how tangible some of the ideas are. So it's not necessarily the most innovative idea, but there's a balance between feasibility. And I think perhaps this sounds amazing, looked amazing, was well pitched, but in reality, the feasibility of product market fit and what it would take and the investment maybe was just too large. Organization wasn't prepared to go that, and didn't invest the time to turn it into, okay, maybe that doesn't work, but what does an MVP look like of this thing?
And that's often the case, and I think that's what we're seeing in the video is that don't invest big, keep investing small, and then see, maybe there's a way. But for that, every company has to have a safe space, a space where those kind of things can be nurtured and dwelt upon, right? But what happens is organizations, the moment they know that this is an idea, they think of full implementation and think of full funding that it requires to take. And that's the problem. I think it's the idea is still not refined and perfect. So we don't know really where it's going to pivot. Maybe there are elements, maybe that big idea is going to be disintegrated into smaller ideas that can be implemented in different ways. So yeah, and I think the similar, thinking we had when we were kind of looking at some of the action items of, okay, what can we do? Like every time you have an idea, small or big, how do you do, make it, push it forward is, one is articulate the value properly, right? Like oftentimes the impact on the user and the business is not equally explained. As designers, we love talking about the impact on the user or the value to the user, but we don't do enough homework to really think about the impact on the business. So that's some of that thinking. And then introduce a pull. So you mentioned, different people across the organization. How do you get connect to the right people who may be interested in some part of that idea, right? And the third one is, nurture the idea. So like I said, we need some space in the organization, in the business to, with, little money and little resource to play with that idea a little bit before, going. So that agility is becomes really important. Anyone else has a story to share when it comes to small or big ideas? Would love to hear that.
Nada, who would you like to share, or did you have one yourself? Or should we open it up to the floor?
So we have some comments coming in from people. And then actually, Arifa says she has two scenarios that she can share with us. And Asad comments that innovation houses generate awesome ideas, but most organizations work in silos. So the ideas eventually dies out, which I think is to your point as well, Shilpi. And so I'd also like to see, can we get Arifa to speak up and give us her scenarios about this?
Sure. Yes, I'll just trying to find, oh, it's double A. That's why I couldn't find it. Okay, I've just asked you to unmute. Hopefully you can share.
Okay, I think she had to go get her laptop battery. Okay, so let's wait for her to come back then.
Okay, should we give it to somebody else?
Nurika, who says the context for the idea to work wasn't right, so the idea fell out. And I think that also, context, I guess, is quite important. Shilpi, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that goes to the understanding or articulating the value impact on the user as well as the business. So, and business is going to buy into something because it has value to both. It will never be without that. But then sometimes the context has to be worked on a little bit more because it's new thing. Maybe sometimes the organization doesn't even have a capability to do that, right? So a little bit more context and explanation of the entire story. Like we as researchers and designers are so good at empathizing with our users. I think this is an opportunity to build some empathy with the stakeholders so that we know what they're thinking and then building that story around it. So I think a good piece of storytelling comes a long way to take any idea forward. But again, I think engaging the stakeholders early on in the conversation is always useful so that you're also aligned with some of the business growth strategy and aspirations for the business. Because if you're too way off, then it's very likely that this may not be something that the business wants to work on at that moment. So I think engaging stakeholders early on so that you can explain and tell the story in the context and the value in their terms becomes a key.
Nurika, did you want to add anything? I've just given her a chance to unmute.
Hi, sorry, I had to run for my laptop charger.
Oh, okay. Or
Hi guys. I don't know if it's relevant, but I had two scenarios I remember when you asked the question. So one was actually like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I used to work for one company. I am a graphic designer, by the way, as my profession. And it was very like old mindset. There's a team of us, but they would just shun the idea that a designer has an idea to pitch. It was more like you just create and you don't do anything else. So that was unfortunate that happened, but that's, some teams are like that. So I think that's kind of unfortunate that happened, but that's just people don't want to listen, or they have this thing that your role is this, you can't have another idea. And then 5 years later, I went to another company where then I was older. I guess I was able to, talk more. So in this company, actually, luckily she embraced the idea, which is my manager, and we we're kind of new, some of us, at different roles, different scenarios. And she would always push me. She's like, no, you're a designer, but you have ideas. Go and help the colleague who's supposed to pitch an idea. So I would always offer and I would always help her. But she didn't like that because, it's like, oh, you're taking my job. Oh, you have more than you need to do. So it starts kind of going there. So that took a while, but luckily I was there longer in that company. So we were able to kind of make friends. And then she listened to me. And she liked how I would bring in a different way, because I would think of it as a design idea, a visual concept, rather than an idea of maybe making it sense. Then it's up to her whether she can pitch, because her role was campaigning pitch, how she talks about the idea. So it was more different. So it's collaboration, I guess,
Super interesting. And you make a really good point. And there's actually a podcast that I heard a long time ago. It introduced the idea of job crafting. So it actually did some research in hospitals or any profession, like multiple professions, and they found out that people who are actually able to job craft, which is maybe they're hired for doing this, but they actually end up, expanding their role to fit, they move ahead and they're more successful in their job. And I think both sides, as researchers, designers, we should have the ability and confidence to be able to craft our jobs. And then the organization has to give that space so that there can be some overlaps in connecting the dots and things like that. And I think from a designer researcher standpoint, which I think most of us are here in this forum, we need to be receptive of these overlaps as well, to make sure that we're not, just because somebody's a communication designer, it's not just their job, like the value they bring is as a whole person, rather than just the skills that they're hired for. So I think that's a great point. And I think, again, it gets back to ideas can come from anywhere and at any level. Not all ideas have to be big, disruptive. They can be some small process improvement that actually changes the way we do things, and it impacts indirectly the customer, right? So thanks for sharing that, Arifa.
We had another question that came in privately from Kareem, and he asks, what are the techniques used to convince the business to change their mindset, which I think you've actually just tackled right now, but I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
I think the attitude should not be to change their mind. I think the attitude should be to help build empathy with these stakeholders and organizations, and then, I mean, people in the organizations, and then kind of, again, building the story, the narrative, and the context with that, understanding is really critical. So it's not like what they're thinking is bad, right, or wrong. It's just that this is another way. So it's like a yes and approach rather than, yeah, we need to change how you think, because that's a kind of a negative kind of a tone. Because innovation can be only won by, or your say, your say in the company can only be won if you have mutual respect for other people and their thinking and why they're thinking, and then working around that. So I think engaging the stakeholders at that level or a different level is really critical, rather than trying to change their mind. I think it's more about telling the story, convincing them, and making sure they understand each aspect, not just business aspect and the revenue aspect, but it's all these the blend of all these aspects.
Let's keep going.
Okay. So I thought we'll do the second one, and then which is the innovation is to fight competition, and we'll just listen to it again quickly and then discuss that. Yeah.
Myth 2. Innovation is to fight competition. Successful companies focus on genuine improvement. They don't innovate to fight competition. Godrej understands to sustain growth, innovation is imperative. Being innovative means evolution with times, knowledge of future needs, and customer value. The real goal is to keep looking for opportunities. Thereby, beating competition is a byproduct of being consistently innovative.
So, I mean, big question is that if you don't innovate to fight competition, then what do you innovate for, right? And that's the question I want to discuss today. So I would like you to recall meeting discussions about your market competition. What kind of tasks were taken up to compete against them, right? Like, what were those discussions, if you recall any? Or any other comments on this particular myth? Innovation is to fight competition.
Is there anyone in the group, or otherwise we'll get one of the other co-organizers maybe? Saad, did you want to share anything?
No?
I guess I can add to that one. I think,
Sure.
you know, a lot of the time when we're trying to convince businesses to innovate or and convince our CEOs to put the ROI or to put, sorry, the investment into innovation, we bring up competition. You know, we should do it because they're doing it. Look what they're doing, and they're way ahead of us, and we need to get there. So let's sort of invest into that. So we kind of fall into that trap of focusing on the competition when you know, as you rightly say, we need to really focus on the future needs and the customer value. So, but I think it's easy to fall into that trap because it's always it's an easy way to sort of win the sort of, you know, C-levels to invest in your ideas and in your innovation exploration.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between being reactive versus proactive, right? A reactive thing is like, oh gosh, somebody came up with this new thing, and now we have to do something about it. And what can we do against them? You know, it's like us against them. But you know, proactively. So how would you? I mean, are there some success stories within your organizations where you actually have proactively invested in a certain kind of way of looking at the future? Or I would love
I got a good one there. Something I've introduced, which was not easy, was benchmarking, usability testing against our competition. So getting the exact same core jobs to be done, to be asked of a customer with our platform and the competition, but also because we're in a very unique market, looking at what's best of breed in other markets that are not necessarily, let's say, competition, but what we look for when we think, oh, that's perfect, but does it actually resonate with our users? So then using that regularly to feed into your roadmap, into what should we build based on data, not just
interesting
opinions.
Yeah, interesting approach. So, I mean, as I say, beating competition is a byproduct of being consistently innovative. I mean, if you think of companies like Amazon, they're constantly developing products and refining their services, and you know, and basically they're investing a lot in research to look for critical human problems that are unsolved. Right? They're not just looking at things that people say they want, but they're looking at unarticulated needs. that people don't even know, like we as users don't even know we need. And then Amazon will come up with something that's like totally drastically new. So investing in research that is really about understanding human life and social sciences and kind of anthropological approach to it is really looking at humans and how they're living their life, and then thinking as a business, how can we be part of that life? And that's a different kind of proactive kind of way of looking at new territories and sustaining growth. Um, and then also, I mean, it's really in India, for example, what's happening is a lot of kind of copycat that you heard in the video also culture. But it's important that we understand our region very well and the relevance of it um, to the market, to adapt an idea which is a foreign idea that comes to the company also. So it's not like saying that it's a bad thing to copy, but I think being an expert in what your region is about and how the users and consumers are different become really important. So if you say that you know looking at trends or looking at future scenarios, proactively really understanding how people are living their lives and how, for example, how COVID has changed their lifestyle. That's a different way of innovating than, okay, somebody came up with a solution, now do I acquire a company and beat that competition kind of approach. um, so I think these are some of the things that we can promote or ask for within the organization to take a little bit more proactive help, kind of approach to innovation. Any other thoughts after hearing some of these ideas?
I think a lot of people are just agreeing with this. And, someone says, Narika says, companies spend too much time trying to amp up their resources to fight rather than use their own unique capabilities within their organization and using their own people's idea to create new value, which I completely agree with. So yeah, I think we're good to go to the next.
Yeah. Okay, and this is the last one. I chose this one, the digital transformation, because I think I've gotten most excitement about this one because I think every second company is going through it right now in terms of digital transformation. Would you agree, Jonathan? Here it's the same thing in UAE.
Definitely.
Yeah. And the problem why this myth is particularly holding people back is because they think they're innovating, but they're actually not. So let's hear this and then we'll talk about it.
Myth 3. Digital transformation is innovation. Most digital transformation projects start with new technology migration without engaging in experimentation or exploration. However, innovation is about identifying problems and finding new ways to solve them. Technology may be an enabler for solving problems, but it's not the only solution. Digital transformation is creating the illusion that you are protected. Point is, don't just migrate, explore and improve.
Oops.
Myth 3.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, I think the big important thing is that it sometimes gives illusion to the companies that they are innovating just because they're digitally transforming. I mean, I was a living example of, my company, which I was working with in the past, where they were doing complex supply chain processes, and they just wanted to digitize, and what happens in digitizing is that there's some redundancies and extra roles and third party people involved and all of that. They're not even needed because you can actually streamline the process now. So we created like a mega service blueprint to really understand how the customer experience journey kind of relates to the behind the scene kind of processes and the third party and how that integrates and impacts each touch point that the customer goes through. And we said, and it was a 2-3 year project, and there was already a roadmap of all the features in the product. And 2 years later in the process, we made this service blueprint and said, 15 of your features shouldn't even be there. Like, you can save a lot of dollars. But guess what? These were co-development projects with customers, and they were logged into contractual legal agreements. And there was no, though they were following agile methodology, there was no space in the contract to actually to be agile. So it was a big chaos, but that's the story. I think a lot of organizations in some way or the other are kind of dealing with. So just to open up to the audience, I would love to ask them, recall a business activity that was replaced with a digital experience. Did it bring value to the customer or user, or did it cause more frustration? I mean, are there stories that you would like to share that have had such, hair-pulling moments?
Does anyone want to share any stories?
One thing that I've noticed a lot in this country is recently, like all the different government organizations or banks or big companies that are releasing these chatbots, which for them is like the latest innovation, because they're using obviously AI and machine learning and all these like big words out there, which a lot of the time actually don't drive any value back to the user. I just recall right now recently an experience I had with my bank, and I was trying to talk to somebody and I just got stuck with this chat bot and wasn't able to move anywhere. So I think a lot of us can probably attest to something like that, where we're often we're experiencing sort of new innovations, which actually cause a lot more frustration to the customer rather than having any value back. I don't know if anyone else agrees.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you're trying to get a delivery and you go into like a, infinite loop on the chatbot, and you're just like, oh, I just want my thing.
And sometimes I feel like we shouldn't be designers talking to designers or researchers. We should be talking to the design leaders. So if any one of you are interested in bringing this narrative to internally in a corporate setting with leaders, I'm happy to come in and do these presentations, because I think the idea is to have them think about what is happening more than anything else. And then as designers, we need to have certain tactics and techniques to challenge that. I'm curious, any people from the US, or other countries that have logged in, signed up, are on, do they have any different kind of experiences through while they're seeing digital transformation happen in their company right now?
Dan, I'm going to pick on you. Are you still on the call? Yeah. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Asad says he has a few good stories. Do you want to share, Asad?
Yeah, let me just get him. There you go, Asad. And I think Alvaro's got his hand up. We'll get it to you next.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Nada. So I'm part of quite a big bank on this side of the region, and we have a huge digital transformation initiative, which has, I guess the total budget has crossed $1 billion, something around that, which again has gone around the IT side of things. So, migration from legacy systems. So, very much relate to what's been mentioned here. The problem which I've seen with a lot of the initiatives driven by the digital team, the digital transformation team, is working alongside the other business stakeholders and trying to get the idea out without I guess it comes down to the shared, we're working on shared KPIs. So everyone wants to take the credit at the end of the delivery. Like this has been our initiative. Mm-hmm. And that's where the idea shapes and shifts and kind of like becomes the same thing by the end of the delivery. And it's just around the experience, the whole idea of innovation kind of like fails eventually when it evolves through so many channels of compliance, IT, GC risk, God knows what, and eventually just becomes the normal or the same service in a different, beautiful looking app.
Right. Yeah. No, I think as designers, I think that's the challenge, is how do you connect the dots between everyone's role within everyone decision making that happens in the customer journey, and how that impacts the customer or the users or the different stakeholders that get impacted in the whole process. So I think silos are obviously bottlenecks, but I think it's important that we as designers kind of help by our visualization skills, try to bring visibility to the whole process and how each of these disciplines kind of interact and have a role to play within the larger picture. I don't know. I mean, Asad, did you guys try some technique, or have you? I mean, you're still going through it. So, are there things you're doing to help this problem?
It's a tough one. It's I guess it's an organizational shift that we're looking at, the culture shift, which is a slow process. It's more about bringing people out from their comfort zone, and we're seeing a lot of resistance towards change, a lot of politics around, well, this didn't come from my department, so why should we even do it? Process re-engineering is a big resistance towards change because it impacts financially to the current structure of the bank, and so there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of politics going on around the bank, where people don't want to do something because it hasn't come from their department. So there's a lot of issues which we're seeing right now.
And I think it's harder in a bigger organization. Well, I work with an organization which has 310,000 people globally. So, and I think we were suffering from some very similar problem that you just mentioned. And one of the things that we did, which actually started working, is to show the stakeholders a holistic view of how people process and the value kind of comes together. So I think one of the tips I would give you is to try to help with that, visibility of how things connect with one another. I think with design and research, we have that kind of superpower to be able to do that. So you can try a little bit of that and see. But I think what problem you're mentioning is much deeper, and there's only so much we can do about it. So. But I think one of the strategies about, exploring and improving, and it is dealing with these silos and, organizational and misalignment of KPIs and things like that. But I think our job as designers and researchers is really to help the organization think more holistically. So how these different decisions they're making in their own divisions, how they interact and kind of add value to the customer.
I wanted to add to that, Shilpi, because we had a comment that came in where it was from Saleh. He said that he thinks that a lot of the time innovation is mistaken or confused with creativity and design, and that innovation isn't necessarily creative, nor is it part of design. So just on your point, what do you think about that?
So he's saying innovation is mistaken as not being creative.
Yeah, he says that a lot of the time innovation is confused with creativity or design. So if you have a new design or you just redesigned your app, you've done something innovative, when actually innovation isn't necessarily just creative, nor is it necessarily part of design.
That's a great point. And the way I think of innovation is twofold. One is the process in itself is innovation. So innovation as a verb versus innovation as a noun. So what is innovation could be, there are many frameworks that could help us think about innovation in, very incremental way, basic way versus, more, transformational versus disruptive way, right? So there's always different kinds and different levels of ideas that you can actually um, break into a framework and say that not every idea is the same big disruptive, right? It could be smaller ways too. So I wouldn't say they're not innovation. They're still innovation, but they are incremental innovation, right? They're different types of innovation. But yes, I mean, I agree that sometimes that's the confusion is like, what is design? What is innovation? I mean, I think designers need to start thinking more business mindedly or strategically, and I think the business people have to start thinking more creatively. So I truly believe that it has to be a team of multidisciplinary people who can bring and balance all of the three prongs of human-centered design, which is business, technology, and desirability, or the human side of things. So I think again, we have to think of job crafting and kind of looking at the overlaps and the blurring of different roles and professions. But I think um, there is always a creative, it has to be, even if it's an engineer who's part of the innovation team, there has to be a creative side of that engineer, the attitude to experiment and develop and, kind of kill the idea if necessary and move forward. So I think that the mindset of innovation is what ties any discipline, anyone from any discipline, to be an innovation specialist. So I think it's a big myth or confusion around this, but I think it's definitely that's the way I explain it. Is that it's innovation is a lot about process of how you do it, and then it's a lot about what new value you're creating for your user and the business. Great. How are we doing with time, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, some people have left that had to go. That's okay. Let's keep going. Let's maybe just time box it to, if we're going through all of them, just like one person, I think maybe.
Yeah. Any other questions? I mean, I only was planning to discuss the 3 myths.
Okay, cool. So we can open the floor to questions. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
We had a comment from Susan. I think you asked about any examples from the US. And I think she gives a good one that actually isn't just a US example. I think it's a worldwide one, and it's regarding educational institutions that are now, especially during what happened with the pandemic, have spent millions to digitize. She says they've spent millions to digitize the student and faculty experience. When learning went remote, it became obvious that many of the stakeholders, students and their parents, didn't have access to technology, Wi-Fi, and therefore content. So I think,
Susan, did you want to elaborate or anything? She's just unmuting. Susan?
I know Alvaro also has his hand up for a while. So
yes, I noticed. Sorry, Alvaro. We'll get to you next. Okay, let's go to Alvaro then. Unless, did you want to comment on what Nada just said? Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a great story, and that's what's happening when you don't take a holistic approach where keeping people and process in mind, right? That's what happened. They digitized it without thinking whether their users will be able to use it or not. So, ensuring 100% adoption is sometimes not a metrics. Their metrics is to launch the solution or the design. So, and I think that's a big problem if the number of adoption rate is not metrics for success.
Yeah, there was also a comment from Kareem earlier, which I think resonates to this comment, and it's that often digital tools are brought in that actually make the experience a lot more worse. And he says because of poor implementation or lack of planning prior to the tool selection and configuration, which can be quite dangerous. And there was another comment related to this as well that said, in the UAE, and I think it's not just the UAE, I think it's actually a worldwide thing. A lot of these programs are just about acquiring tools without really rethinking how to improve the experience. I think that, you know, obviously with the pandemic and everyone having no choice but to go digital, a lot of companies and businesses and industries had to jump into these different quote unquote innovative tools that they weren't ready for or their customers weren't ready for. And this is where we're seeing probably this, you know, loop of, is this actually working or is there value?
Yeah, no, that's a great, thanks for your comments. These are great comments. And I think that's why you do small tests and pilots for these things, right? So, you know, don't invest too much unless you have actually tested it and kind of tried it. So I think that's the issue, is where people are brought in really late in the process. So yeah, thanks. Alvaro, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, just so I'm calling in from Canada, and I work for the public service. And you know, for us, I think that there is that kind of misconception of innovation as invention, and something that we like. Innovation for us is really tied to perceptions of productivity and relevance. So there's a lot of pressure for us to innovate. So I think for us, a lot of that is about reframing innovation. You know, kind of. You know, just because I go to IKEA and I use a plant stand as a stool doesn't mean that I'm inventing something new. I'm just finding a new use case for something that already exists, right? So that's more akin to innovation. So yeah, so I just wanted to share that story in terms of our experience with innovation in the public service in Canada. And just the other second quick thing is that, you know, for us, the silos. I understand the reticence to kind of embrace silos, but for us, you know, we tend to look at silos as something that is required for allocation and planning and things like that. But we really look at making the walls of the silos, if you will, more permeable, so that information can flow between the silos while still, you know, maintaining kind of like the supporting underlying infrastructure that you need for a really large organization.
Yeah, that's a great, and I think the question about how do you make these walls permeable is a big one. And I feel like I'm sure a lot of your organizations are going through agile transformation also, if they're not, they're already agile. But there's another issue with that, is that agile, not the way the process is structured is you put things into bite-sized pieces and develop these point systems and user stories, and then you have these developers develop them. And what easily can happen is they lose the big picture view of how that user story they're developing impacts decision making on the user side.
Right.
And that's a big issue, and that's at even at just a developer level, like at a technology level. And set aside, like that is one place where you need to help them visualize the holistic picture so that they can start using their common sense to make smaller decisions about questions they might have about it. And I've seen that in organizations where they're doing this user story and they have no idea how, where, what context that is being done or used in. And it's a big problem. And then that is technology side, but then the same way across disciplines like legal or regulations and all of these, how do they fit in terms of the actions and the touch points that actually end up, you know, impacting the user experience?
For sure. Well, and the other thing too is that, you know, with so much technology becoming so embedded, you know, it becomes almost invisible, you know, akin to what Donald Norman was talking about way back when in his book, The Invisible Computer. And so I think it's one thing to consider the technology side of it, but if we're getting to that point where, you know, the technology is the enabler, but really we have to look at what does the experience look like in terms of like using it in situ, and you know, what do those interactions look like? You know, is it something that is intuitive, and also, you know, what are the other things going on in the environment at the point and time of interaction, because that context becomes really important.
so important. Like I remember we were developing an app for inspecting the cars, automobiles in the whole supply chain. And they had a digital screen to use. And in the winter cold in the Midwest, there's no way you can use the gloves and use that screen. Like,
Right.
have we considered that as a company? So things like that.
Yeah, it becomes funny that it becomes an accessibility issue. For not what you would typically think of as somebody requiring accessibility accommodation.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Was there anything else, Nada, or any other questions I might have missed?
There's a question about time constraints, which we might have tackled, but it's VD Shetty says, I have a question. Innovation being a long process, can we always face time constraints? How do we tackle this?
Yeah, I think time should be allotted. I mean, this is my personal view, allocated based on the level of ambiguity and uncertainty in a specific idea, right? The problem happens when any organization is treating all ideas as the same and it has the same process. The key is there are some ideas that are really easy, incremental, they can just be developed and out there, right? Quickly launched. But there's some ideas that are still ambiguous. We're still defining the user group, segmentation. We're trying to still understand what the current experience looks like and trying to evolve, and that those should be given more different kind of timeline, right? But what's happening is, since the organization, especially the digital organizations, are going agile, it's not clear to them how that early exploration kind of fits within the development cycle or the sprints, right? So they came up with this design sprints and this idea, but I think it's really critical that we define our timelines based on the level of uncertainties or unknowns with attached to a specific idea. I think that's really critical, and you feel that more and more where there's a friction between the researchers and the developers, where the researchers are saying we still need to do some more research, but developers are saying I need my my requirements, I need them today, yesterday. So I think it's really important. Like, if you think of innovation as a squiggly line where it's like really ambiguous upfront and it becomes clear and focused, refined at the end. I think as a team who's actually involved with that idea has to be totally aligned on where they are on the squiggly line. What kind of questions have been answered versus not answered? How much more exploration research is required or not? And when people are not in the same page, that's when the problem happens. And based on that, we need to divide our timelines and kind of expectations about, when what is going to happen. Does that answer some of it?
Nada?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. There's some good conversation starters happening in the comments section. Alvaro, would you like to ask your question to everyone, or do you want me to repeat it?
I'll just get you to unmute, Alvaro.
Yeah, sure. So again, one of the things that we come up against is that agile is I say with air quotes, relatively new in the public sector in Canada in terms of something that we actually use rather versus something we just talk about. But one of the problems we come across is the fact that the decision making or the approval processes are still waterfall. So which means that we can only use agile up to a certain point. So I'm just wondering if anybody else has had that experience, or like how do we, other than educating senior management on what agile is, what else can we, or what else have people done to kind of avoid, agile theater or innovation theater?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did that in my last organization where I actually integrated, and I have an article on that topic, so I would highly recommend you read that. It's and I can send links in the comment section for the meetup.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That particular article, I actually talk about combining lean startup, agile transformation, and design thinking as a way to reduce business risk. So at that company, I actually integrated all these philosophies to create one holistic innovation process that had proper stage gates, output, input. There were clear metrics at each gate when an idea moves from one stage to the other. There were certain assets that had to be delivered for approval process and all of that. And our company was a big Six Sigma lean, kind of quality, and the bigger the organization, the efficiency becomes even more important, right? So I think it's a really matter of constructing a process that is transparent to the organization, where they have clear expectations of, what they're going to get, what level of questions or what kind of things they have to approve for the idea to move from one stage to the other, from starting from a pitch to different various stages, where there's a concept, there's a prototype, there's a pilot, etc. So I think you're right, and that's a problem with a lot of organizations that are just transforming into agile kind of way of working. Though agile describes an inception process, but I don't think there's a lot of talk about it. They only focus on things that are tangible, like sprints and those kind of terminology that really has caught on, which is really geared towards development of the idea, not the early inception. So I don't know, Alvaro, do you agree with that?
Yes, I think also for us, again, it's just this lack of understanding of what agile really means from our perspective. I mean, more kind of like the senior leadership level. Not to say that they're not capable of understanding it. It's just, I don't think it's like people have sat down at that level yet and gone through, as you said, like the, how this can actually reduce a lot of the risk. So from that perspective, I agree in theory, but in practice, it's more difficult, I think, to put into play.
Right, and I think it's really, in that particular article, I focus on the role of the designer, and it's really hard because we're stereotyped as designers or researchers, and that's all we do. But there's different kind of design or research happens at different stages of the project, and that's what I write about in that article. Is like, it's almost about educating leadership about, like, okay, this is the kind of design and research you need at this stage versus this is what and this is what agile does in this. Like, so there's a pros and cons of each methodology, and they're tackling different kind of risk at each stage. So whether it's a market risk, whether it's business risk or technology risk, but you have to see it together. They're grounded in the same fact that you chunk things into bite-sized pieces and get early customer feedback. That's what they're all grounded in. They're all methods that are saying the same thing. It's just that they need to be seen as a holistic and together to be able to do justice to it.
Actually, and that kind of works too with, I think that bodes well for projects that may be subject to changes in the political will. Because if you've managed to show small incremental progress on something, once you can actually say, but we've already done this much, it's more difficult, I think, to then go in and say, well, like we have a new party in power, and so therefore that's going to change, or this is going to change, or because then at that point it's almost like they have to say, okay, well, we're going to essentially waste all the money that we've already put into this and go another direction just because of a change in opinion. So I think it from that perspective, from a project, I guess from a project perspective, you can reduce that risk of things changing based on changes in political will or changes in kind of the opinion.
A question as well from Kareem. I'm just gonna unmute him so he can ask his question as well.
Great, I like this small group.
Hi, Shilpi, how are you? So,
Good.
so yeah, I mean, Alvaro raised a very, very interesting point. I faced this in a billion dirham program where the whole factory, the digital factory was. So this is just a comment, and then I have a question for you. So the whole factory was running on Agile, developing digital services, and then all the reporting was PMP waterfall, and it was really, really challenging. And I was, as a change manager, I was kind of stuck in between both. So it's a common thing, and if it's still occurring in Canada, it's scary. It means that we're probably going to be facing this for a while here.
It's happening
My
in
question,
the US too, I would say.
Absolutely. There's people still asking for PMP certification when they hire people, because they don't even know what PMP is, and they don't even understand. So I think just to answer that, I think it's about storytelling and just talking to people and talking to leadership. And this brings me to my question, Shilpi. What kind of questions do you ask? I mean, I assume that at some point when you're brought in to do these projects and help with innovation, the CEO or the business leaders are asking for help. What questions do you ask them to see if they're actually ready for change? If they're, how do you assess their maturity and their ability to accept drastic change, new business models, new way of doing things? I mean, we could go to Kodak and Nokia and all these stories. There's so many, but what questions do you ask?
Yeah. So I think just a disclaimer, I mostly work with legacy companies who are in midst of transformation. And I would say the person who brings us on board is the person who's trying to bring change, right? So they are the change managers or change leaders in their company, and they must have probably a buy-in from the leadership to bring that change. And that's why they're being hired, right? So most of the time, I don't have too many allies in the organization. And the way I approach, it's more so two things. One is I do start any project with stakeholder interviews. That's the first thing I do, whatever the project is. And the important thing is to first make them understand why we're doing what we're doing. And then also making sure that in the end story, we have their view in it. They can see that they're part of that initiative, even if it's in a small way. So, and the questions I would ask them is, what their aspiration is for the change or the new thing that we are trying to work on, or the new future that we're trying to investigate in, or the new kind of service we're developing. We always ask them about their vision and their aspiration and what they see as bottlenecks from achieving that. So now suddenly you're trying to really build empathy and help your liaison or the sponsor understand and build empathy with them quickly, right? And I would say, and that's probably majority of our customers where there are only 2-3 people who have bought into this, and rest of the organizations, we are kind of coming in to help them change their mindset or have them think differently or be part of a bigger, broader initiative. So it's actually very exciting because it's the most challenging thing.
If I could just add, I think from a slightly maybe different angle, like from a design or a service design perspective, in my previous job at a consultancy in Australia, when we were asked by large organizations as well, or government, state government in this example, to help, we would map the current experience, not just the customer facing, but the behind the scenes service. And with all the relevant stakeholders, we would so get alignment from them of what is the current state. We would then do research with the both internal, external, could be customers, could be internal people. So that could be qualitative research, quantitative research. We'd run workshops, co-design ideas, and then we would do future kind of bold vision. And in this case, for government, it was like, maybe 10, 15 years into the future. Part of that was creating what is the persona of the future. So like in this example, it was renting. What will renting be like in the future when an Australian will not be able to own their home? Like you are a long-term renter. What does that person look like? So, and again, it's co-creating that with them. And then once you've got that vision based on a shared reality of today, you scale it back to, okay, what is the MVP in delivering I know, I mean, there's different ways of doing similar things, but just wanted to, you know, kind of, it was a great question, Kareem.
Jonathan, I think it's you confirm one fact. There is a lot of work to change, and it's not change minds. Shilpi, earlier I'd asked a question. I was saying maybe change mindset, right? So what I try to do is just to start to break the ice by starting to get them to change their approach, their view of things, and not necessarily change their mind right away. It's impossible to do that. And if you don't have a team, if you don't have a concerted effort that will run these workshops, like Jonathan said, that will, you know, bombard them and spook them and you know, remind them of what happened to the companies that refuse to change and to accept sometimes, you know, like Kodak, the innovation came from within and they blocked it. And then, you know, their stock is now worth a penny. And you know, you need to scare business leaders into innovation. But then when I think of the banker, I'm not sure of his name, who was speaking about the challenges of political change, you know, the challenges he's facing in the bank, and Assad. You know, Assad, sorry, and the challenges they're facing inside the bank. It is IT driven, and unfortunately, IT is very tool driven, and the tool vendors in the region here are very, very let's say close to IT. So they just want to sell their tool and get their KPI and get their bonus. So you need to really engage with the leaders. You need to convince IT that if they don't change, they're not going to have a seat at the table. If you do a poll, you're going to see that most chief digital officers or chief data officers don't even come from IT, they come from marketing, because the IT guys are still stuck in old IT, not really becoming digital IT. You know, the story that I tell quickly, to be as brief as possible, is that if you go to IT and you say, I need a car, they'll start building you a car in the garage. Whereas digital IT would spend a lot more time asking you questions. Why do you need a car? To go places. Well, how many people are you? How often? Do you have small people, big groups, small groups? And digital IT would come back and say, well, here's an app. Here's an app where you can order a bus when you need a bus, a small car when you need a small car, or maybe a scooter. And this change from IT, traditional IT to digital IT is one of the major shifts that needs to happen. So in fact, when I'm conscious, I'm in the human-centered design group. So I don't want to take this into a pure digital transformation discussion, but I think one thing we have to admit is that there's a lot that needs to change. But I'm always looking for that spark. I'm looking for that change champion, that CEO, or that person that has a seat at the table. It could be a consultant that's very close to an advisor that is willing to champion and take the story and keep chipping away at it till some changes happen. And it's not just a tool-driven big program that's just you know, we signed on with this big consulting firm. No one ever got fired for you know, hiring McKinsey or PwC or whichever one of the big four. And I think this is the reality on the ground, that we need to basically find the change champions that are sitting at the table and really convince them that we need to approach it in a different way. We need to innovate. We need to, you know, like you were saying, job crafting. We need to go through all our teams and see, you know, what their skills are, and see which ones are ready to transform and be the leaders of tomorrow. And there's so much happening right now. There's so much disruption. I mean, the example of the education is huge. My family runs a nursery school since 41 years here in Dubai, and they are anti-digital, right? So they refuse to give iPads to kids. So they had to really think very hard about how do they deal with the pandemic and the lockdown. So they started to train nannies and parents. So it's not about, preschool, you have to teach kids. It's really thinking, okay, what am I trying to achieve here? And then finding an innovative way to approach it, and remaining true to the objective, right? And not getting lost in the details or in this is my department, this is what I'm paid to do, and where are these courageous people? I keep looking for them everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I'm always looking.
I would really enjoy an offline discussion with you if you want to talk further on the topic. I have worked with a true legacy company that is super siloed, and in that company we were actually trying to kill the old system and create a new one. And I had to work with people who actually build that old system. And now imagine working with them to create the new system. And it was a very big challenge, but you have to put them on the pedestal sometimes and make them feel like there's experts in that. So how can we learn and together kind of work together? So it's a lot of change management as a designer or a researcher as well. Like, you're constantly trying to build relationship, build empathy, tell the right story, help them. It's mutual respect too. So it's a lot of work.
Absolutely. There's a lot of ego management.
Yes.
Call it change management or ego management. And there's a lot of putting people on pedestal and give credit where credit is due. But basically, managing expectations, managing fear of the unknown. But if the CEO or the business leaders are not ready to undergo that transformation and innovate and the bottom line is, an organization to survive for the next 10 years or 20 years has to have built-in digital transformation team within its organization. Agile is here to stay, so you have to have that backlog that's continuously being refilled, and the business being so in tuned and participating that they're constantly thinking of priorities and prioritizing that backlog so that it can be developed, whether it's a configuration of a tool or if it's designing of new services or designing new experiences. And this is a reality. So digital transformation has to be part of any organization. There has to be a team continuously transforming. And as long as IT doesn't think that way, it's going to be and as long as the business, the leaders, the people that have a seat at the table, the revenue officers are not clear on that, it's not going to change, and you're going to see a lot of companies being disrupted.
Yeah, I think the danger and the point of this myth was, when you're engaging in digital transformation, thinking you are doing innovation, and you're not. That's probably the worst thing that can happen in a company. So
if digital transformation is just implementation of tools, true digital transformation, and I consider myself a digital transformation let's say expert, is not just adding a tool. It's rethinking the whole business model. It is actual innovation. I put that as a comment, and to me it's fine. Yeah, most people don't understand what digital transformation is. They just think it's a project. It's just adding new software.
Shilpi,
Alvaro, did you want to? Can you unmute? You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All good.
Sorry. Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah. So I have a question too, because we keep bringing up the role of the designer, and so I lead a team of 7, and when I started with them, one of the first things I did was sit down with them and start to reframe our role as designer, because for them, they were very much, they kept their role very small in terms of, it's just like, no, I do interaction design and do this and do that. But with that, what I tried to bring to them is say, no, we need to also be more strategic, because you really need to understand how the pieces come together, which pieces are required, like by how much and in what sequence kind of thing, right? So back when I started with design, like in the early 90s, it was really what we were talking about at the time is we want to make art that works, not works of art. But in order to make art that works, we need to understand why we're doing it, what and what the, and I guess it's almost like looking at it, what are the requirements, from a more current perspective. So I just wanted to ask you from that perspective, do you think that we need to kind of evolve the role of designer to be more strategic, kind of almost like creative director level of understanding the business, not just what you're making, so that we don't focus so much on being clever and more on actually providing value?
it's interesting how you said it should be at the level of the director. I think I would kind of build on that and say maybe it should even be at the level of a CEO, where you have a you have a understanding of the overall business aspirations. I don't know, in many big companies, I know at GE we had visibility to the KPIs at each level. Like, so we could go into my boss, my boss's boss, and so on, and look at what their key performing indicators are. And it was very useful because as a designer, I knew strategically where the organization is headed towards, right? Or if you have a growth officer, or a part of the business who's focused on new growth opportunities or things like that, then it's a great idea to have friends in those groups, as a designer, to have visibility. But I think I truly believe impromptu conversations across the organization with finance, legal, regulations, contract. I would encourage your team to go and learn about all the disciplines to become superpowers. I think that's how I gained my superpower, to the extent I went to sales, account planning, all of these. And that's where I discovered that our process was not aligned. Agile, our contracts were not agile. Like if I had to say I have to pivot and kill some of my contract with the co-development will not allow that to happen, right? So I went to legal. I had discussions with the legal. So, but that was not my role to do, right? Like that was, I job crafted my role to that. But I could only do that if because I thought holistically at an organization at a business level. So I totally agree. I would encourage, and it's funny. In a few days ago, I had a colleague who works at a big company, and she's part of an innovation group, and she's given a direction that she cannot have random meetings with colleagues across the discipline. I'm like, that's totally counter what you're supposed to be doing, right? How do you know? How do you, you should be a sponge, in the business where you have an idea of what's going on there.
Yeah. It's almost like being a good journalist.
Yes, exactly. Ethnography is much like journalism.
Alvaro, I want to chime in quickly. I think, any company that has talent, designers in-house should encourage each and every designer to interact with the business. The challenge today is, as a lot of us are working remotely, how do you go to the cafeteria and bump into people and have conversations and tell stories? And I think this is the challenge of today. Today, we're not working from home, we're living at work. And everybody's got Zoom calls planned all day. And when do you actually have that moment at the cafeteria or at the water cooler or the coffee machine to have a chat and ask someone, be curious and say, oh, dear business person, what challenges are you facing right now? Why are your sales dropping? And as a designer, be able to, So I was just going to say, as a designer, coming in with that energy, that positive creativity, that insight, because you're researching, user experience, you have all these metrics, you're looking at different things, you're looking at all the different ways that, psychology and people are reacting to different, feelings and colors and emotions. And you want to interact with the business person. You want to share that knowledge. And don't be surprised if they drag you into the next, meeting where dollars are being allocated to teams. And to me, this is the advice that I would give any creative person. Get involved, talk to the business, tell stories, bring that insight. Don't just sit in your cubicle or behind your screen, designing and implementing your design language, or go and get involved with the business. Definitely.
I just want to add, is that Kareem?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah.
We already know each other now. No, I think I wanted to say, just to add to that, Kareem, that I think, yes, COVID is a problem. It is a challenge. But I think as a team, if you are a unit of individuals, you can try to change that culture. You can tell somebody, I want to do a 15-minute chat just to understand what you're doing. What are you challenged by? It's okay to do that. So I'll tell you my example. I think I've been a remote worker for 15 years now. even my job before, I was based in Chicago and Michigan was my headquarter, and I would just do random calls. And initially when I would call, they would say like, what do you want, Shilpi? And I'm like, I don't want anything. I just want to talk. Like, what are you doing? What are you up to? And I'm sure some of the friends who are on the call, they might, relate to that. But slowly within 2 months, culture changed in our team. It was okay for me to call, or sometimes they would call randomly, right? So I think it's for us to be the change agent in the company, to use our digital tools and not work, live meeting to meeting, and be able to do those kind of things. Why don't we start a culture? Like, doesn't your team take up on you yourself?
Great, great conversation. I think we could keep probably going all night or all morning or all day, but and please reach out to Shilpi in the interest of time. Shilpi, did you have any other final comments? I just wanted to share kind of next month and then maybe wrap it up.
No, I think I just enjoyed the discussion. I mean, I can, again, like, we can talk all night about this topic. I would encourage you to email me or reach out to me. I have a Medium article. I also write on Innovation Excellence blog, which is actually now Disruptors League. So I do a lot of thought leadership pieces, and every time I'm publishing, my hand shakes because I don't know if people will agree with me or not, or this. I try to be as provocational as possible in my writing to challenge people and businesses and leaders. So if I would encourage people to share if they agree with my writing to their leaders, if they think that will make a difference. But the whole idea of us and our work at Khoj Lab is to really change people's thinking and how they think about innovation. So I appreciate all the discussion, and feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. It's really been great. And please, reach out, and you can have a look on Meetup, add people on LinkedIn, continue the discussion for sure. And thanks for everyone that's stayed. I just wanted to super quickly share next month, we've got Lital Sherman, who is the head of experience design at PageUp, an organization in Australia, but they have it's a global organization with global clients. She's very successfully grown the design team, and she's going to talk about the power of influence and how we can be successful within our organization as better influencers. It's going to be a little bit earlier in Dubai, as she is in Melbourne, so it'll be 11 o'clock for her, but hopefully everyone can join in, or block that into, speaking of innovation, into your calendars, invite some colleagues and say, we're going to do something a little bit different today, and watch that. So thank you again, Shilpi, and thanks everyone for all of your questions and involvement. It was really fantastic. Really appreciate it. Have a great evening.
John.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good night or good day.
Bye all.